This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Watelli Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. China manufacturing stayed resilient in April despite US tariffs, but consumers pulled back with retail, property and investment falling short of expectations. Now, Nvidia's Jensen Huang teases what's next in AI at Asia's biggest tech show. As industry leaders gather, could this be the moment for a united response to tariff pressures? Our correspondent breaks it down. In the danger zone, Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba's cabinet approval has plunged to a record low, with soaring rice prices emerging as the key trigger. And the Taiwan Coast Guard warns of possible political warfare by China after online videos show a Chinese flag planted on a Taiwan beach ahead of President William Lai, ahead of President William Lai marking 1 year in office. South Korea's snap presidential poll is just 2 weeks away after months of political drama. The Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung holds a solid lead over key rival Kim Un-soo from the People Power Party. We delve into how the candidates fared in their heated Sunday debate. China's economy stayed resilient despite the ongoing US-China trade war. Official economic data released for the month of April showed that the country achieved stable growth with mild softening in consumption and investment. Tan Si-hui with this report.
A picture of calm painted by China's National Statistics Bureau. The country's production and demand, as well as overall employment, largely remained stable. Retail sales of consumer goods grew 5.1% year-on-year, despite missing analyst estimates of 5.5%. Service industry production also increased by 6%, with fixed asset investment growing 4% compared to the year before.
总的来看，4月份 外部冲击影响加大，但宏观政策协同发力，主要指标平稳较快增长，国民经济延续向新向好态势。
Officials cited key factors like the consumer trade-in programs, increase in tourist and transportation flows, as well as the Belt and Road Initiative as stabilizing forces. While they're confident of steady economic growth, analysts remained cautious.
If you look into the details of the industrial activities, you'll realize that, for example, the textile output is actually being hit hard by the tariffs, which kind of reflect the impact of tariff on China's domestic industrial activity. And second thing is, which is more concerning to me, is that if you look at the car industry, automotive industry, even if they're facing more tariffs globally, however, investment from Chinese enterprises into this industry remain really, really strong. So that points out potential overcapacity issues.
房价运行总体稳定。那从环比来看呢，4月份70个大中城市当中的1、2线城市新建商品住宅销售价格环比持平，3线城市略有下降。那么从同比来看，4月份70个大中城市当中呢，各线城市的商品住宅销售价格同比降幅是继续收窄。
While there isn't a direct link between the trade war and housing market, analysts say trade shocks are yet to be reflected. The imminent trade impact on labor market and income growth will indirectly affect house purchases. So China may prioritize job stabilization, especially in the construction sector, which employs a majority of rural migrant workers. Moving forward, analysts see more downside risk ahead.
The sense of uncertainties will continue to drag on private investment, employment, and consumption decision. And from another perspective, the delay of introduction of a bigger stimulus package will be another downside risk to China's economy, because it takes time for the stimulus policy to translate into economic activities.
The fiscal package is likely to be directed at the overall labor market, specifically export producers. Expectations are also mounting for China to double down on science and technology investment to improve self-reliance in the semiconductor and high-tech industries amid the U.S.'s export controls. Tan Si-hui, CNA, Beijing.
For more insights on China's economy, we will be speaking with Hao Hong, economist from Huafu International, in just a moment. Turning to Taiwan, where Asia's biggest tech expo, Computex, opens tomorrow in Taipei, offering a glimpse into the future of computing. Well, artificial intelligence will take center stage again this year, and the likes of robotics, next-generation tech, and transport. But the trade show will take place under the cloud of America's sweeping tariffs. For more on this, CNA's Victoria Jen joins us live from Taipei. Victoria, we know that the who's who of the tech industry, they're going to descend in Taipei for this year's Computex. Perhaps some say it's an opportunity for them to, come up with some strategies to deal with all the tariff pressures they are facing. Do you see that happening?
Absolutely. With U.S. tariffs and chip restrictions causing big headaches for the tech industry, Computex 2025 couldn't come at a more important time. It's no longer just flashy gadgets. It's become a place where CEOs and tech giants talk strategy. Intel's new CEO, Lip-Bun Tan, is in town marking the company's 40th anniversary in Taiwan. He's hosting a private dinner with suppliers and holding meetings with key players, showing just how seriously Intel is taking this moment. And Nvidia's Jensen Huang, one of the most influential voices in tech, has been hosting closed-door dinners over the weekend, sitting down with top industry leaders like C.C. Wei from TSMC to talk strategy and AI's next phase. He has taken the spotlight with his keynote speech, helping set the tone for where the industry goes next. Now, here's our report. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang has now become the biggest draw each year at Asia's biggest tech expo. At his keynote on the eve of the opening of Computex in Taipei, thousands turned up, eager to hear his latest prediction about AI.
But I promise you, in 10 years' time, you will look back and you will realize that AI has now integrated into everything. And in fact, we need AI everywhere. And every region, every industry, every country, every company, all needs AI. AI has now part of infrastructure.
As part of what he called Nvidia's strategy of providing the complete AI infrastructure the world needs, Mr. Huang unveiled Nvidia's new Grace Blackwell system, designed to run AI models with greater speed and energy efficiency. He also introduced the DGX Spark, a desktop AI supercomputer for researchers and developers that will hit the market by Christmas. Upping the stakes for Taiwan, the tech mogul announced plans to expand Nvidia's operations here, with a new, larger office in Taipei and deeper collaborations with Taiwan's tech giants.
And so today we're announcing that Foxconn, Taiwan, the Taiwanese government, Nvidia, TSMC, we're going to build the first giant AI supercomputer here for the AI infrastructure and the AI ecosystem of Taiwan.
Taiwan is already home to Taipei 1, an NVIDIA AI supercomputer in Kaohsiung, but Mr. Huang hints that this could be just the beginning.
It stands to reason that Taiwan, at the center of the most advanced industry, the epicenter where AI and robotics is going to come from, it stands to reason that this is an extraordinary opportunity for Taiwan.
With some of Taiwan's most influential tech leaders in attendance, the 2-hour-long presentation at the Taipei Music Center is more than just a product showcase, but also a strategic call to action. With Mr. Huang assuring local partners that the next generation of AI won't just be built by NVIDIA, it will be built with Taiwan. Once again, Jensenity has taken over Taipei. Crowds are gathering, phones are out, and fans are lining up just to catch a glimpse of him. He's not just delivering a keynote. He's become the face of Taiwan's AI momentum. And in a year full of global uncertainty, that kind of star power is giving the industry something to rally about.
So, Vic, now that the Nvidia CEO has got the ball rolling for Computex, what else can we expect when the Tech Expo actually starts properly tomorrow?
Well, there is a lot in store when Computex officially opens on May 20th. Now, more than 1,400 companies from around the world are showing how AI is being built into the technology we use every day, from laptops and phones to cars and factories. Nvidia's Jensen Huang, he is here teaming up with Taiwan's top tech firms to build smarter and faster AI systems. And AMD is launching chips that bring AI to everyday laptops, making them faster, more efficient, and more useful for tasks like video editing and smart assistants. Then there is ASUS, one of Taiwan's biggest names. They're showing off a new line of AI-powered laptops that can optimize performance on the fly. Great for gamers, content creators, and everyday users alike. Now, their new displays and cooling systems are also getting a lot of attention. MSI, another key local player, is stepping up with laptops that can predict what you need next and offer sharper visuals than ever. Now, there are also 450 startups from across the globe, all pitching bold and creative ideas that could shape how we live and work in the near future. So the innovation is very much alive this year, and what's on display at Computex is likely to shape the technology we will all be using very soon.
Oh, exciting times ahead. Thanks so very much for sharing with us. CNA's Victoria Jian speaking to us live from Taipei. We're going to go for a break now, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, a candid chat with an expert on the latest economic numbers out of China. And Chinese tech giant Xiaomi announces a $6 billion investment to boost its semiconductor clout. Details next. Hello again, you're watching East Asia Tonight, and Roland Lim is standing by with the very latest from the business world. Roland, we've got twin economic challenges on the trade war front and a weak domestic demand taking a toll on China as well. What's that all about?
It does look that way, Oteli. The latest data show that growth in industrial output as well as retail sales slowed in April. Now, experts say trade war uncertainty denting Chinese confidence, resulting in slower economic activity. That curbed risk appetite in China and Hong Kong stocks, ending roughly flat. The mainland markets have recovered ground lost since Donald Trump's tariff announcement in early April, after Beijing and Washington later agreed to a 90-day tariff pause last week. But the rally does appear to be losing steam. For more insight, we're now speaking with Hao Hong. He is veteran economist at Huafu International, coming to us live from Hong Kong. Huafu, good to have you on the show. As always, China's growth data for April showed signs of slowing, especially in retail sales and investment. Now, if I'm a retail investor, should I be worried about China's recovery stalling, or is this just a temporary blip?
Yeah, well, I think today's economic numbers are somehow slightly less than expected, but I think the industrial output is still very strong. This is because exporters are still trying to catch time, to ship their products overseas, and also, overseas buyers, especially those from the Americans, are still trying to stock up, just in case that the tariff negotiation goes bad. So I think, in the months of April, we're seeing a very strong set of industrial output numbers. The manufacturing sector is receiving strong investments as well. So the investment growth in the sector is substantially higher than expected. But I think consumption is still very slow. And that could be seasonal as well, because during the Spring Festival in the first quarter, traditionally is a strong consumption quarter. And also during the first quarter, the government actually sent out coupons and also consumption subsidies for people to spend money. So I think in the first quarter this year, we see a very strong set of consumption number, but then going into this second quarter in April, we're seeing a slight slowdown. So I think the overall picture remains more or less the same as the first quarter. Production very strong. Consumption without the subsidies from the government is not nearly as strong as it should be. And that is hindering, or it's actually showing how difficult or how challenging it can be to transform the Chinese economy from investment production-based economy to a consumption-based economy.
Yes, the latest data does show that sectors like home appliances, electric vehicles, high-tech manufacturing still performing well. Do these align with China's domestic resilience strategy? I mean, are they investable themes right now?
I think these sectors are doing well, because some of the subsidies is actually going into these sectors. For example, the government is giving out subsidies to buy electronic goods and also EVs, and therefore the EV sector is still remaining quite strong. But I would say that the true effect cannot be sort of examined until all the effects from the subsidies sort of run out. So I would say that because this year we're trying to refocus the Chinese economy on the domestic economy. But if you look at the restaurant sales, for example, on the high frequency data, is showing quite a bit of slowdown in restaurant consumption. And also the domestic travels, the 5-star hotels is doing it very tough as well. We're seeing a consumption downgrade in the Chinese economy. So all of this is is showing that people are somehow circumspect about their futures, especially their job security and also income growth potential. So I think as a result, people are postponing consumption and also postponing housing purchase. So if you look at the April property figure, it is also showing sort of a slowdown or worse than expected housing numbers in April.
You mentioned the property sector. It's still struggling with home prices falling again. Is it too risky, do you think, for retail investors to touch anything related to Chinese real estate right now?
Yeah, I think it's still way too early. Because what we're seeing right now is that as soon as there's a pickup in the newly built housing, the new housing market, and then the secondary listing would come up substantially. So it's creating a huge inventory overhang for the housing sector. So the housing inventory in terms of sales is amount to over 3 years now. It's still one of the highest in history. And also, there was a 300 billion yuan worth of housing fund that was approved last year for buying out some of the houses as a reserve. But for some reason, these funds are not being applied aggressively. And so far, only 30 to 40 billion yuan worth of fund has been applied. So I think as a result, we're seeing the housing sector still needs substantial help. So despite the best of efforts from the government, for example, the KBOC is cutting interest rate, it's cutting RRR, and also lower down payment requirement, and also lower mortgage rate as well. But I think the demand for housing is still sort of languishing.
How exports held up better than expected, even with the tariffs. Which sectors or companies in China could benefit the most from this new trade deal that's pending, as well as a potential rebound in global demand?
Yeah, I think in April, the positive surprise really is that, tariff negotiation is going better than expected. And so, American buyers are starting to reorder some of the goods from China, trying to stock up. So as a result, in the last week, right, so after the new deal was announced, we're seeing a pickup in shipping rates and also pickup in shipping orders. Many of the container ships become very difficult to book. So which is good, right? So, it's keeping the ports very busy. So I think, the sectors to benefit from this trend really is the shipping sector and also the export-oriented sectors. But it really depends on how long this new deal could last, or how fast we can sort of strike out a new deal that is favorable to the Chinese economy. So I think right now we have 90 days grace period. During this 90 days, we will see intensive negotiation between the two sides. I'm pretty sure that the U.S. doesn't want a bad outcome, to go back to the the days when tariff was like 145% high. So I think it would affect the U.S. economy and also change the inflation outlook for the U.S. consumer as well. So I think both sides has a very good incentive to reach a good deal very soon. So hopefully, within these 90 days or as soon as possible, some sort of a new deal can be set for both countries.
The possibility of a silver lining. Thank you. That was Hao Hong from Huafu International, live from Hong Kong. A Chinese tech manufacturer, Xiaomi, planning to invest at least $6.9 billion into chip design over a period of more than 10 years, starting from 2021. Now, since launching its chip initiative 4 years ago, it has poured in more than $1.8 billion into developing its advanced mobile chipset. That's the X-Ring 01. Now, Xiaomi's renewed push into mobile chip development comes as competition heats up in China's smartphone market, with rivals like Huawei and Apple turning to custom designs in order to boost user experience. Xiaomi says that its chip design team now has more than 2,500 people. Xiaomi shares about 3% higher in Hong Kong today. Nvidia and Foxconn are teaming up with the Taiwanese government to build an AI factory supercomputer, a boost to the island's growing tech ecosystem. The state-of-the-art supercomputer is the latest national infrastructure project aimed at driving breakthroughs in generative AI and high-speed computing. Leading chipmaker TSMC is expected to tap into the platform to accelerate its research and development efforts. The project is led by Taiwan's National Science and Technology Council, which plans to offer AI cloud resources to local tech firms, researchers, and startups as part of a broader push to boost AI innovation and adoption across industries. Investors in the U.S. set for yet another bumpy start to the trading week. This after Moody's downgraded America's credit rating by a notch from its highest level. The news came after markets closed on Friday, so investors will get their first chance to react when Wall Street comes online later today. The futures currently on the back foot. Aside from stocks, traders will be watching U.S. Treasuries as fears over an anticipated looming debt time bomb play out. Yields for two-year notes is currently at 3.993%, and 10-year yields is currently at 4.513%. It went as high as 4.49 on Friday. Meantime, the dollar index is currently down 0.23%. Remember, it is so far 7.5% in the red. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent tried to allay fears on Sunday when he downplayed Moody's decision. Now, he called it a lagging indicator, laying blame on the Biden administration. He insisted that Washington is on track to produce economic growth that will outpace the rise in debt. Moody's cited ballooning deficits and interest costs as the reasons behind its decision, with national debt standing at more than $36 trillion. They attributed to successive administrations and lawmakers. The downgrade marks the end of an era, as Moody's had upheld America's spotless credit rating since 1917. It's the last of the major ratings agencies to downgrade the country, and follows similar downgrades by rivals Fitch in 2023 and S&P back in 2011. And according to Moody's, the path to regain the AAA status is clear: increase revenue or slash spending. And that'll do it for business. Oteli.
Thanks so very much for that, Roland. Coming up on East Asia tonight, what has the price of rice got to do with sagging political support in Japan? We'll let you know. And Taiwan warns of potential political warfare against the island as President William Lai marks 1 year in office. This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. China manufacturing output still resilient in April under America's tariff pressures, but retail property and investment perform under expectations. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's cabinet approval hits a new low and the high cost of rice has something to do with it. And Taiwan's William Lai set to mark 1 year in office. And the island's Coast Guard is calling out Chinese political warfare after videos show a Chinese flag planted on a Taiwan beach. Well, just 2 weeks to go before South Korea's presidential election, and the Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung is leading the polls. A Real Meter survey shows Mr. Lee ahead, with just over half of voters' support. People Power Party's Kim Un-soo is trailing at around 36%. New Reform Party's Lee Jun-suk sits in single digits. Well, the candidates clashed in a fiery debate last night. Mr. Lee said there is no need to rush a trade deal with the U.S. and called for more AI investment, stronger labor protections, and a 4.5-day work week. Mr. Kim hit back, promising deregulation and job creation. Now, he also said he is open to raising Seoul's share of U.S. troop costs, a move likely to please Washington. The South Koreans are heading to the polls on June 3rd. And for more on South Korea's first presidential debate on Sunday, Grace Shin, my colleague, joining me now in the studio. So, Grace, I know you watched the debate yesterday, and it is meant to focus on the country's economy, but things somehow veered towards, what is Seoul's relationship with the U.S. and China as well. And the two leading contenders, they had contrasting views. So tell us all about that.
Exactly, Oteli. As you mentioned, the debate yesterday was supposed to center on economics, but it quickly highlighted how intertwined economic and diplomatic affairs are for South Korea. And given that South Korea is a middle-powered nation that heavily relies on exports, and not to mention it's still technically at war with nuclear-armed North Korea, balancing relationships with the U.S. and China is crucial. So Lee Jae-myung, the Democratic Party frontrunner, said he wouldn't be in a hurry to have a sit-down with Trump. He emphasized that a pragmatic approach is needed that puts South Korea's national interests always as the top priority. He cited how recent U.S.-China tariff negotiations pointed to Washington not really having that much of a complete upper hand when it comes to reciprocal tariff talks. He also said that he believes there is enough wiggle room for negotiations before July 8th, when South Korea, like the remainder of the world, is slated to be hit with reciprocal tariffs. In the case for South Korea, 25% is forecasted. Lee also pushed back on criticism that he was leaning too heavily forward for China. Instead, he said diplomacy shouldn't be about choosing sides. He said all he wants to do is realize that there is strategic importance both for the U.S. and Japan, but also arguing at the same time that sidelining China would be a mistake. Now, conservative voices like the second frontrunner, Kim Un-soo from the People Power Party, strongly advocated for reinforcing ties with the United States. Kim said his top priority would be to secure a summit with Donald Trump as soon as he's elected. He also planned to address not just the alliance, but cost-sharing issues that always remain a contentious issue between the United States and South Korea. If you recall, in the first term, Trump requested South Korea up their expenditure in order to station U.S. troops. And currently, there's around 28,500 U.S. troops in the country. So when Kim mentioned that he was willing to talk about this, Lee criticized that this would be prioritizing U.S. interests over South Korea. But regardless of what had been mentioned, what we could tell from yesterday's debate is that security and economics aren't separate issues for South Korea. Instead, they're two sides of the same coin.
And they do have very differing views in that regard, but I'm sure a lot of South Koreans are concerned about the sluggish economy, right? So what were some of the main points that were highlighted during this debate?
I think we'll touch upon what many South Koreans were actually expecting from the debate. Unfortunately, there was a lot of back and forth when it comes to some key policies, especially regarding labor laws. So there was back and forth on thoughts of the labor policy, the contentious one known as the Yellow Envelope Law. Now, the Yellow Envelope Law is an amendment of the Trade Union Act aiming to protect workers on strike from being held personally liable for financial damages, and a practice that critics say discourages lawful union activity. It was named after a grassroots campaign where citizens sent donations in yellow envelopes to support workers hit with these massive lawsuits. And if you recall, it actually had been vetoed twice by the ousted Yoon Suk-yeol government. So the Conservatives have a very negative view on this yellow envelope law, and it remains a major flashpoint between the progressive and conservative camps. That's why yesterday we could see a back and forth between the Liberal and Conservative, Liberal being Lee Jae-myung, who defended the bill, saying that it complies with the international labor standards as well as the Supreme Court, whereas the Conservative candidate, Kim Mun-soo, pushed back, saying not only does it violate constitutional policies at the moment, but it would make it harder to do business in Korea. The debate also touched upon working hour reforms. As you mentioned, Lee Jae-myung proposed a 4.5-day work week, and South Korea has one of the longest working hours, which is why this is always a key topic in presidential debates. When Lee Jae-myung said that, Lee Jun-seok from the New Reform Party actually criticized the plan's feasibility, saying that that would require wage cuts. But Lee stood firm, saying that shorter hours shouldn't come at the expense of workers' pay, and that, in fact, South Korea needs to work on working reform hours, whereas the conservative candidate, Kim Mun-soo, said that should be held until later, that should be up to businesses, and it shouldn't be mandated by law.
So after the debate wrapped up, I mean, how are South Koreans, rating their performance?
I mean, it was the first televised debate for a snap election that was caused by a martial law decree back in December. And for months of political turmoil, South Koreans have been eyeing who would lead the country. Now, observers say there were more political jabs than actual substance on policies discussed. And though South Korea is facing a contracting economy in Q1 with exports falling and consumption stalling, the latest presidential debate was evaluated to not offer much in the way of clear economic strategy. Instead, it turned quite defensive, which observers say is only natural given that polls suggest that Lee Jae-myung is front-running by over 50%, and that's a rare statistic when it comes to South Korea's politics. There never was a dominant political contender here. Now, when Lee had to defend many of his policies, many took jabs at what type of comments he made in regard to the economy during his campaign trail. If I give you one example, Lee had said that it only costs 9 cents to produce coffee. And this remark sparked massive backlash, not only from the public, but small business owners, because they said Lee seemed to ignore the real overhead, like rent, wages, and raw material costs. The public was a bit worried that the potential president doesn't know how the economy is running. Now, Lee later defended that this was an oversimplified explanation, and he was referring to the coffee bean cost back in 2019, literally only being 9 cents at the time. But he explained that he does have a general idea on the economy. But as you can see here, much of the debate was focused on what type of comments were made during the campaign trail rather than actual constructive policies. So the candidates did mention what they would do with AI, R&D, and job creation, but not much concrete plans. And in the past, Lee was not only in regards to Lee's comments, but his legal troubles were brought up, including his pending retrial on election law violations. But nonetheless, the polls haven't moved much. Lee continues to lead by a very wide margin over both Kim and minor party candidate Lee Jun-seok. So observers are noting that if the candidates want to win over undecided voters, and we have 2 more televised debates slated for the 23rd and 27th of May, they would have to bring concrete strategies to the table and actually persuade the public that has lost a lot of political trust over the months that a new leader is liably in the hands of everyday South Koreans.
Right, we'll be looking out for that in the next 2 debates. Thanks so very much, Grace, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we do have more coverage leading up to the June election on our website at cna.asia, as well as on our mobile app, including this commentary on how changing the president might not be enough to fix deep-rooted issues within the nation's political system. Well, in Japan, the support for Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's cabinet has hit a record low. A Kyodo News poll held over the weekend showed a 27.4% cabinet approval this month, down some 5 percentage points from April. An approval rating below the 30% threshold is seen as a danger zone for administrations. Now, the price of rice more than doubling in 1 year was a major issue for nearly 90% of respondents, who said that the government did not do enough to keep costs down. And 7 out of 10 respondents felt it was necessary for consumption taxes to be cut in some form, but were concerned that social services could be hit as a result. Well, the tariff talks with the U.S. was also another concern, with a similar number of respondents not expecting a positive outcome. Mr. Ishiba has rejected consumption tax cuts, even as cost of living is soaring ahead of an upper house election in July. The leader ruled out today tax cuts funded by the issuance of additional debt, pointing to the rising cost of funding the country's already huge debt. Well, an analyst Bloomberg quoted says that a challenge to Ishiba from within the ruling Liberal Democratic Party could likely come after the July election, as support for the leader has been on the downtrend since he took power. Staying on rice in Japan, the country's agriculture minister Takuito is getting flack for saying he never had to buy rice, thanks to gifts from his supporters, and that he even had enough to sell. Now, he apologized today, saying he may have exaggerated to please his audience and avoided the question of whether he will step down. His comments made over the weekend sparked anger on social media. Now, one ex-user and parent said they've had to sub out rice balls for bread in the morning and that the minister should be giving away his supply if he has too much. Another ex-user condemned the minister and said both gifting and receiving are criminal. Now, the Japanese government has been releasing rice from its emergency stockpiles in recent months, but it's done little to rein in prices. Officials said last week it will release another 300,000 metric tons through July and tweak its purchasing policy to replenish the stockpile. Now, in other news, Taiwan's Coast Guard says it's not ruling out what it calls political warfare by China, as President William Lai marks 1 year in office. The remarks come after images surfaced on social media of a person planting a Chinese flag on a Taiwan beach. Well, the man claimed to have sailed across the Taiwan Strait on a small rubber boat before returning to the mainland. The video was later deleted. Taiwan says the video of the flag planting was taken on the beach in Taoyuan, but it remains unclear whether the flag planting was done by someone who crossed over from China or by someone on the island. An investigation is underway. Well, Taipei, meantime, says China has been using pressure tactics and could use such videos to disrupt public morale.
去年520赖总统就职后，中共即发动联合利剑2024A 军演，不排除在赖总统就职周年，中共会再度利用类似手法及影片进行认知作战，扰乱我民心士气。海巡署将持续强化部署，并与友军保持密切联系。
Beijing sees Taiwan as part of its territory and has previously called Mr. Lai a separatist, rebuffing his offers for talks. Now, the Taiwan president is facing not only increased military and diplomatic pressure from China, but his minority government must also navigate an increasingly volatile global trade landscape amid America's tariffs war. CNA's Victoria Jen takes a closer look at how President Lai has fared so far as he heads into his second year in office.
中华民国已经在台澎金马落地生根，和中华人民共和国互不隶属。
William Lai managed to push Beijing's buttons on his very first day in office, referring to Taiwan and China, using terms that Beijing considers as implying Taiwan's equality with China. In the months that followed, Beijing made its displeasure known by stepping up military drills in the waters and airspace near Taiwan. The Taiwan leader then doubled down on his rejection of Chinese reunification efforts and influence. In March, he introduced 17 counter-infiltration measures targeting China, including tougher immigration rules and the reinstatement of military courts.
这样的中国，已是我国反渗透法所定义的境外敌对势力。我们没有选择。 必须采取更积极的作为。
Mr. Lai is taking a much tougher stance against China than his predecessor, even though he's governing from a much weaker position with a minority government. In the legislative yuan, Taiwan's parliament, many of his policies have been blocked by the opposition. The polarization is evident in recent polls, with his approval rating just slightly higher than his disapproval rating.
我相信他不会把我们带向不好的方向，对不对？那国会少数也没办法，这人民的选择啊。 对吧？那就是考验他的能力了。
治国无能了，搞些有的没有了，我不满意了。
To take back control of the parliament, Mr. Lai's Democratic Progressive Party, working with civic groups, has launched a laborious impeachment process against dozens of opposition lawmakers.
台湾因为民进党热衷于这些政治权力的计算，反而陷入了更大的外在政治经济安全的风险。这一个民进党政府不太告诉台湾的人民，但是台湾的人民最后可能会知道，在所谓的大罢免，不管民进党是成功或失败，但是台湾可能又进入了另外一个相对危险的境界。
Taiwan recently found itself in uncharted waters, with U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policy threatening to upend the global trade landscape. The historic surge in the value of the Taiwan dollar also sparked fears that the island is surrendering control of its economic policy to appease the Trump administration's obsession with balanced trade.
台湾政府如果已经把台积电这一个谈判的筹码直接双手奉上，然后对美投资现在紧锣密鼓在规划，台湾新台币的汇率又突然陡升了那么多，所以台湾可能对美国的谈判筹码已经丧失殆尽。
From colder than ice relations with China to the showdown in parliament against the opposition and Donald Trump's tariff shocks, Mr. Lai will need all the help he can get as he enters his second year in office. It's arguably one of the most complex political landscape any Taiwanese leaders have seen in years. Whether Mr. Lai can move from survival to success may hinge not just on stabilizing ties with Beijing or Washington, but also on winning the political battles at home. Victoria Jen, CNA, Taipei.
Coming up next on East Asia tonight, just 1 week after Islamabad's ceasefire deal with New Delhi over the most serious conflict in years, China set to host Pakistan's foreign minister on a 3-day visit starting today. And heavy rain killed at least 5 people in China's southern provinces. China will host Pakistan's foreign minister on a 3-day visit starting today. Ishak Dar will meet his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi to discuss the situation in South Asia. Well, the visit comes a week after Islamabad reached a ceasefire with India to end their most serious conflict in decades. China is a major weapons supplier to Pakistan, and the recent conflict presented the first real combat between modern Chinese warplanes and advanced Western jets. Pakistan claims to have shot down 5 Indian jets made by France and Russia. Meantime, China says it will speed up work on a dam in Pakistan after India's recent threats to cut off water supplies. The project in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province is scheduled to be completed next year and will supply 300 million gallons of drinking water a day to Peshawar. Beijing has invested billions of dollars in Pakistan's infrastructure under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, part of the Belt and Road Initiative. China has also in the past provided financial assistance to bail out Pakistan. That help could prove crucial again after the IMF tightened loan conditions to Islamabad. The international lender has imposed 11 new requirements, including income tax reforms and a plan to phase out industrial incentives. Now, at least 5 people have died and several more are missing in China's southern provinces of Guangdong and Guangxi following heavy rain over the weekend. Now, China's weather authorities have issued multiple warnings for severe rain and geological disasters in the northwestern province of Xinjiang and several provinces in the south. Parts of Zhejiang, Fujian, Guangdong and Guangxi are now under a yellow alert, which indicates a high risk of mountain flooding. The state media reported floods in many southern cities and farmlands in recent days. In Guangxi, authorities raised its flood alert to its highest level. At least 3 people were killed following flash floods in Longlin City. In the north, Beijing and Tianjin were also affected by hailstorms, strong gales and torrential rainfall. And while the south grapples with flooding, the north is dealing with a different extreme. Weather authorities warning of a scorching heat wave, and it is expected to hit multiple places in the north and northwest, as well as the Huanghai region from today till Thursday, with temperatures forecast to soar as high as 40 degrees Celsius. All right, we've got some headlines now from media outlets in East Asia. Yonhap says that North Korea's Kim Jong-un could face a war crime probe at the International Criminal Court. Song Sang-hyun, a former president of the court, said the time is right, given Pyongyang's support for Moscow's war against Ukraine. The leader is yet to be referred to the ICC. Japanese police have arrested 2 Chinese nationals over a hit-and-run incident in northeast Tokyo. Asahi News says the incident left 4 children, school children rather, injured, 1 suffering a fractured foot and 3 others with light injuries. RTHK reports that researchers at the Chinese University of Hong Kong have found a drug developed in China promising in treating tumors. It was given to trial patients suffering from cancers of the lung, colon, and pancreas, who then saw their tumors shrink significantly or disappear altogether. And for our latest East Asia-related stories, do log on to cna.asia or read them via our mobile app. Looking beyond the region, Israel has begun extensive ground operations throughout Gaza, marking a new phase in a military campaign that has killed hundreds over the past few days. Palestinian health officials say at least 130 were killed overnight, in addition to more than 460 in the past week. Families have started fleeing northern Gaza as the Israeli military issued evacuation orders in areas that face imminent attack. They say there is nowhere left to go. Israel says it will allow a basic amount of food into Gaza after more than 2 months of blockade. Trent Murray has more.
Well, this certainly represents a shift in position to the policy that we have seen in recent months. It has been now over 2 months, March 2nd, when that original blockade was introduced. No clean drinking water, no food, no medicine allowed to enter the Gaza Strip. And throughout much of that time, the Israelis have been saying that it's about pressuring Hamas, but also that stockpiles within the Strip were high enough to prevent a major hunger crisis. But what we are seeing overnight here is a shift in that position. Military officials here reportedly telling Israel's security cabinet that food supplies belonging to the UN and aid groups had now completely run out, and that the allowance of aid into the Gaza Strip was necessary in order to prevent a hunger crisis. That is what has reportedly triggered this shift in position from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who put out quite a lengthy statement explaining that those basic food supplies would immediately be begun allowing back into the Strip. But senior officials here are also saying it is a temporary measure. It's only going to last about a week or so, because the Israelis have been working on this plan to set up temporary aid distribution centres, predominantly in the south of the Gaza Strip, which will actually be run by private American contractors with IDF security. Now, that's obviously not quite ready yet to be implemented, which is what shifted this position today. They're going to try and allow some basic aid in, but it is obviously coming as the UN and others really do have, well, they've been continuing to warn about a major looming food crisis. The latest estimates suggest around 500,000 people are at risk of starvation. Seemingly that message has got through now to the Israeli government, and we will await to see, we expect in coming hours, some of that crucially needed aid being sent into the Strip.
And that wraps up East Asia tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. And you can always find us on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching.